Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're embarking on a really special and maybe a little unsettling final exploration for this particular series. This is our sixth and last deep dive focused on Antarctica. And we thought, what better way to wrap up than by tackling the really mysterious, sometimes bizarre claims? We're talking alleged military secrets, hidden bases, the really unexplained stuff.
Absolutely. And our source material for navigating this is, well, it's a bit different today. It's YouTube transcript. So it's this collection of theories, rumors, purported events. It gives us a very specific, let's say, unofficial lens on these stories. It's definitely less about hard verified facts and more about these persistent, often shadowy narratives that swirl around Antarctica.
Exactly. So our mission, really, is to unpack these connections, sift through the whispers, and just consider what might actually be hidden down there under all that ice. It definitely challenges the conventional story. Okay, let's dive in. So first up, let's talk about Antarctica's strategic role, especially before the Antarctic Treaty in '67 sort of demilitarized things, officially at least.
Yeah.
Our source points to heavy involvement from the US, the UK, the USSR, and the strong suspicion that all three were maybe testing atomic bombs there.
Right, conducting tests far from, prying eyes.
Yeah.
The Cold War reaching the South Pole. But the source gets even more specific and controversial about later nuclear stuff. It claims there were at least 3 detonations, apparently by the Americans, in 1998, July 27th, August 30th, September 6th.
1998, that's much later than you'd think.
Exactly, and supposedly triggered really deep, like 300 meters under the ice. And the location mentioned is Queen Maud Land.
Wow. And why? What was the alleged purpose?
Well, this is where it gets interesting. The source says the purpose was to recover frozen areas or even recover the locations of other detonation sites.
Recover other detonation sites.
Yeah. So if that's true, if these 98 detonations were about recovery, it implies something pretty staggering, that covert ops weren't just isolated incidents, but maybe this long, ongoing effort, decades long, to manage or uncover something really significant, something perhaps tied to earlier hidden activities. Cold War, maybe even earlier.
And here's where it gets really interesting, connecting back. The source claims these 98 targets were in areas the Germans had explored and recognized back in 1939, 1940.
Right, during their new Swabia expedition.
So it's almost like these later actions were dealing with something left over from way back then. Makes you seriously wonder what was really happening on the eve of World War II down there, cleaning up something from nearly 60 years prior. It's mind-boggling. Okay, so these alleged military ops suggest something important is hidden on or in the ice. But what about under it? Let's talk subglacial mysteries. The source mentions these warm water lakes. Both German and American expeditions supposedly found them. It sounds almost like science fiction, doesn't it? An oasis in that frozen desert.
It does, and the prime example always cited is Lake Vostok. Huge lake, situated, get this, 4,000 meters under the ice, right below the Russian Vostok base. Now, officially, its existence was revealed in 1989, but it's widely thought the Soviets knew about it much, much earlier.
Ah, and that was why they wouldn't leave the base after the International Geophysical Year?
Reportedly, yes. That knowledge was supposedly the key reason. They knew they were sitting on something massive. And what's fascinating here is, Lake Vostok is still largely unexplored. Officially, it's fear of contamination. But the source hints it might also be apprehension about, what might be found.
Right, the unknown unknowns.
Exactly. And adding to the mystery, there's this huge magnetic anomaly detected nearby, growing towards the pole. Now, according to this source, this anomaly is presented as evidence supporting Albert's inner Earth theory.
The hollow Earth idea.
Sort of, yeah. The concept that there's a hidden world inside our planet may be accessible via the poles, ancient myths, some fringe science, and it also supposedly validates certain German maps showing submarine routes under the poles.
Okay, so what does this all mean? When you think about Antarctica's actual geography, satellites show it's not one landmass, right? It's an archipelago.
A group of massive islands covered by a unified ice sheet, yes.
So, if it is islands under there, then the idea of underground or sub-ice channels for submarines, like the source mentions, claimed by Friedrich or shown on the Peary race map.
It suddenly seems maybe less unimaginable. as the source puts it.
Yeah.
The Piri-Reis map itself is a whole other rabbit hole, of course.
Yeah.
That 16th century map supposedly showing an ice-free Antarctic coast.
Right, and then there are the ancient tunnels and cave networks mentioned. The source suggests maybe these are just natural cave systems, reduced by glaciers, misinterpreted by non-scientists as man-made tunnels. But then you get things like the diaries of Joseph Barnick talking about polar men. It adds this layer of, well, folklore or something else entirely.
It's a strange mix, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, shifting slightly but connected is the whole theory about a hidden German base in New Swabia. The idea is they built it during that 38-39 expedition, but it was maybe destroyed or badly damaged around 1940, leaving just a few stubborn outposts.
Just the idea of a secret Nazi base in Antarctica, it fuels so much speculation.
It really does. And the alleged Allied response. According to the source, it was extreme. The US, USSR, and UK supposedly decided to use nuclear charges to completely wipe out any trace of this German presence.
Nuclear weapons to deal with a supposed hidden base? That seems drastic.
Extremely drastic. It implies they saw it as a massive threat, something only nukes could handle. But this raises an important question. Despite these alleged efforts, the rumors didn't die. Rumors that some Nazis weren't destroyed, that they escaped, maybe to South America or even
into the inner Earth.
Exactly. And the source mentions Soviet-found maps as potential evidence for these escape routes. It links the inner Earth idea back to ancient history, saying it's a concept found in almost all civilizations. It gives it this mythic quality.
And you mentioned the UK earlier. Their role seems quite significant here. The source claims Britain was maybe the most active nation in Antarctica during the 1940s, despite the secrecy, and that they gathered a lot of intel on German intentions, captured Nazis, intelligence networks, field research.
Right. It suggests a serious, tangible intelligence operation focused on German Antarctic activities. These activities strongly imply something very significant was believed to be happening. Plus, the source mentions post-war scientific findings, hinting at some kind of human disturbance in Antarctica's recent past. Could that be indirect evidence of, say, a British campaign in New Swabia?
Subtle environmental clues pointing to secret operations. That's quite a thought. Okay, let's move to some really unexplained phenomena beyond the military stuff. In 1999, a research team reportedly found a virus. No known animal or human immunity. Top labs couldn't trace its source. Sounds like a movie plot.
It absolutely does. And the source offers two main theories. One, it's some prehistoric life form frozen in the ice, accidentally released. Plausible, maybe. The other theory, much darker. A secret biological weapon left over from that German expedition in 38-39.
Okay, let's unpack that. A German bioweapon, but the source. Does it explain why it would be released? Especially right there where it was supposedly stored?
That's the logical gap, isn't it? The source posits the theory, but doesn't really explain the why of a release like that. It seems incredibly counterintuitive, militarily speaking.
Unless the release wasn't intentional or the story is incomplete.
Exactly. These narratives often have those kinds of gaps, leaving room for more speculation. But there's another mystery that might tie in. The ozone hole discovered over Queen Maud Land in 1984. Now, officially, it's CFC's global warming. But the source floats an alternative idea.
Which is?
That the hole could have been caused by a massive explosion, maybe nuclear-sized, perhaps related to that alleged destruction of the Nazi base back around 45. It makes you wonder, how much environmental change might be linked to hidden history.
So putting it together, the source presents these fantastical-sounding things, dangerous viruses, weird atmospheric holes, secret military actions as interconnected facts. It really paints Antarctica as this profoundly mysterious place, far beyond just ice and penguins.
And it circles back to strategy. Why would the Nazis occupy such a key spot and then leave it undefended? Especially, as the source points out, when they poured huge resources into fortifying places like the Atlantic Wall, which was arguably less strategically vital in the long run. That inconsistency is puzzling.
It is. And confirming any British campaign in New Swabia?
Well, it's tough. Stories of polar men, ancient tunnels, battles. It sounds like pure fantasy.
It does. But then again, we know the Nazis experimented on soldiers trying to improve resistance to cold for the Eastern Front. Could some experiments have been successful enough to allow adaptation for a small group in Antarctic conditions? Pure speculation, but... And if a base existed, it wouldn't have been regular troops, elite forces. Like the British had their own secret wartime bases. Think about those Japanese soldiers holding out for decades after WWII, or the Nazi werewolf groups resisting long after VE Day. Is it impossible some German unit held out? And British special forces, they were and are top tier. Sabotage clandestine ops with minimal resources. That was their specialty. Hitler's order to execute captured British commandos shows how seriously they were taken. A small, secret British mission doesn't seem that far-fetched in that context.
And you see the different philosophies. The British approach, success with limited means. The American, massive force like Admiral Byrd's Operation High Jump. Maybe that's why High Jump and its own conspiracy theories get all the attention, overshadowing whatever the UK might have done more quietly.
So what does this all mean? The big questions linger. Was there a Nazi base? Was it wiped out by the British, then maybe finished off by Allied nukes later? And crucially, how much about Antarctica's past, present, and maybe future is still deliberately hidden from us?
And just to wrap up this series with one last really strange piece from the source. A documented event from 1966. In 1975, two British Antarctic survey scientists, Michael and Daniel Jackson, were looking at photos taken near New Swabia back in '66.
Okay, what did they see?
In one photo, they saw this weird formation, flying discs, surrounded by a traveling mist.
Yep.
And from the center of these discs, a black ray of unspecified energy shot down into the ice, reflecting off it.
A black ray, flying discs, in 1966.
That's the report. The source even calls it a possible black beam of negative energy. Fits with some of the more esoteric theories, maybe the black sun stuff.
Yeah.
It suggests that whatever mysteries Antarctica holds might be far stranger than just hidden human bases or old wars. Maybe something else entirely is alive down there.
Wow, okay. And with that truly bizarre image, we have to bring this deep dive and this entire Antarctica series to a close. We've definitely journeyed through some incredible layers of mystery, alleged conspiracies, and hidden history. Antarctica just keeps defying easy answers.
It really does, and hopefully you, listening along with us, have had some of those aha moments, or maybe just more questions prompted by these unexpected connections. From potential Cold War secrets to subglacial lakes, Nazi rumors, strange viruses, it's been a dive into a narrative where truth feels much stranger than fiction.
It certainly has. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration through the icy depths of history and mystery. This does mark the end of this specific series on Antarctica, but gosh, it leaves us with so much to think about. What other secrets are still locked away down there beneath all that ice just waiting?
Indeed. And perhaps, if compelling new sources or questions pop up, we might just revisit this fascinating continent again someday. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring.